Here on YouTube there's plenty of information on the best possible film photography setups you can get. The best camera, the best lenses, the best image quality. But what is like the bare minimum you need? What is the camera you need when you just care about the aesthetic and not about image quality? I might be answering that today. Let me introduce you to today's camera. The Dacora Super Dignette. Let's play a fun game of which feature on this camera even works. The viewfinder works. The film winder works. Any shutter speed 1/30th or below doesn't work. The light meter doesn't work. But worst of all, the glass elements inside of the lens are extremely dirty, and the shutter and aperture blades are in a horrible state, extremely dirty as well, and also starting to rust. My first attempt at trying to restore this camera wasn't all too successful, and because I don't have the greatest track record of repairing cameras, I was scared that any further attempt would risk breaking the camera altogether. So before I made any further attempts at trying to restore it, I decided that I would at least try to shoot one roll of film, and let's just see how that looks. Kind of a funny story, guys. Here in Germany, analog photography has just been recognized as part of the UNESCO Cultural Heritage Program this year. And the location I shot those pictures in is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. So truly keeping history alive here on this channel. You guys can thank me later. Anyways, let's talk about this camera. What is it? Why do I have it? Why am I shooting it? So I got this camera as a gift from my grandaunt. It's her old camera. She doesn't use it anymore. Return viewers of the channel will know about my camera collecting shenanigans. So it's kind of hard for me to pinpoint the history of this camera. Many Dacora Dignette cameras were made, and even within the models themselves there's variations. So I have the Dacora Super Dignette with the Prontor 300LK shutter, so there's different variations in terms of what shutter they used, and the 300 refers to the fastest possible shutter speed on this camera being 1/300th of a second. And I have the ISCO Optische Werke Göttingen Color-Isconar lens, 45mm f2.8. So within any Dacora Dignette model there is different variations with different shutters and different lenses from different manufacturers. So it's kind of hard to say when this camera exactly was released, made, whatever. My best guess is 1962, or at least at some point in the early 1960s. So what is my own personal history with this camera? So after I got it, I of course realized that there was dirt inside of the lens, the one we've spoken of. And I realized that whenever I pressed the shutter, sometimes the shutter would stay open, not close again, until I wound to the next frame of the film. Or I didn't have film loaded, obviously, when I was testing that stuff. Now, I'm not great at repairing cameras. The only other time I've tried it so far, the camera was not repairable, and now it's sitting on top of my shelf, still taken apart, because that camera is never gonna work again. That doesn't mean that you can't try, and try I did. I gave it a good attempt. So I did manage to remove this lens element. You can take this entire front plate off, And then from the back of the lens I did manage to remove one glass element. I cleaned that glass element, and by removing that glass element I was also able to reach the shutter, clean that. That seems to have restored at least most of the shutter speeds I have available on here. Okay, so I don't have any sort of device to like test if the shutter speeds are correct or if there's a few milliseconds too fast or too slow or whatever, but at least they do open and close consistently. So that's the shutter speeds 1/300th, 1/125th and 1/60th we're talking about. 1/30th and the bulb mode still stays stuck open. The funny thing is there's another YouTube video here on YouTube about the Dacora Super Dignette by a different YouTuber who of course has a different camera than me, but also says that for some reason for him as well the slower shutter speeds get stuck. So maybe that's just a problem of this camera model. But today we have a bright sunny day, so that shouldn't be a problem. I should be able to avoid those slow shutter speeds with no problem. And in general, bulb mode is something that I don't use a lot because of course handheld, my hands aren't that stable, so it's gonna turn out shaky. And well, if I want a camera to be used with bulb mode on a tripod, then I guess it's just not going to be this one. Then of course the broken light meter is not a problem for me because this isn't the first camera I own that has a broken light meter. That seems to be like the first thing that breaks. So I got this TV Artisan light meter too, which I use, and that's no problem at all. Really the biggest problem I have with this camera is the dirt inside of the lens, which I was able to clean one glass element, but there's multiple glass elements in here and I was only able to reach the one. The other ones I wasn't able to take apart. The inside of the lens is still very dirty. Now I don't know how much of an effect that's gonna have. Let's hope it doesn't have too big of an effect, but of course, as with all of these videos, this is the very first roll of film I actually shoot on this camera as I'm filming this video. So I've never seen any pictures taken with this camera before and I don't know how bad the dirt inside of the lens is going to affect this camera. Let's hope it's not too bad, because some of those pictures I took on this camera, on this roll of film, should probably be pretty good. So let's hope they actually do turn out great. Yeah, I mean, there's not really anything I can do about it. With better tools and stuff, I should probably be able to take this lens apart, but that would of course also risk that I break it and am unable to put it back together again. And the other point is that this of course isn't the only film camera I own. I have a camera collection and I actually also own the Voigtlander Vetomatic 1, which is a different camera that is basically like exactly the same type of camera as this one. Same functions, same sort of similar body design, the same functionality, and well, that one I've used many times now and it works. So I will make this video and am I going to use this camera again? I don't know. For one, it turns out how the pictures turn out. If they turn out bad, am I going to go through the effort to try and fix this camera? I don't fully know yet, since I own a different camera that is basically the exact same camera but functional. There's not really any reason for that. But let's just hope that the dirt inside of the lens doesn't affect it too bad and the pictures turn out great. Talking about the Voigtlander Vetomatic 1 though, this is a great opportunity for me to correct a little mistake I made in the video I made about that camera, where I called it a rangefinder camera without a built-in rangefinder. Which, yeah, retrospectively, that sounds pretty stupid. What I meant by that is it's a rangefinder styled body, a rangefinder looking body. I think rangefinder styled is still a word that many camera manufacturers and reviewers use nowadays. And it turned out that I made a translation error and that it's supposed to be called a viewfinder camera. So this is a viewfinder camera as well. What does that mean? So there's no sort of mechanism inside of this camera for you to know if your image is sharp, for you to know how far something is away from the camera. Of course, we again have, you know it, you love it, the old focusing scale on front of here, where you have the distances, and a depth of field scale where you can, according to the aperture you've set the camera to, focus your shot. But this camera has no way of knowing how far stuff is away from you, and it has no way of telling you if your image is sharp or not. It comes down to you knowing the distance of an object or guessing it correctly and then putting it in here on this focusing scale. Again, not my favorite way of focusing a camera, definitely very limiting in terms of the kind of creative shots you're able to take, because you have less room to play with like blurry backgrounds or stuff like that. But I've gotten used to it and I'm hoping that most of the pictures in this video are gonna be sharp. Another great fun fact about this camera is that the shutter is sitting here on front of the body, not on top of the body as it is on basically any other camera that I've ever used. Well, it is like that on any other camera I've ever used, except for smartphones, I guess. No, it's sitting in front of here, which I guess is kind of a fun twist, I have to say though, from using it. I actually find this more uncomfortable to use than a shutter that's sitting on top of the body. But maybe that's just because my hands are built that way. I could think that maybe for somebody with smaller hands it could be more comfortable to reach as opposed to having to reach all the way up here. But yeah, for me that's not ideal. I feel like I have a worse grip on the camera and it's more uncomfortable to reach, but whatever. It's a fun little party trick, I guess, something that makes this camera different from my other cameras, which I appreciate. And another point, in the video I made about the Voigtlander Videomatic 1, I talked about how much I like the viewfinder on that camera, and it's really great, I like it. But on this camera, it's way worse compared to that camera. For one, it's just smaller, it's harder to see through, you really have to smush your face up against it, and the frame lines that you have inside of this viewfinder to tell if everything you want to be in the shot is in your frame are less visible. And also I did use this camera to try and shoot a sunset, and in that case when you kind of shooting in the direction of the sun, all of the frame lines inside of here just disappear. First little roadblock, I've already kind of noticed that I don't really like this viewfinder. There's a weird little like crosshair in there, I don't know, I'm trying to hit headshots or whatever. But yeah, shooting in these kinds of lighting conditions, especially when shooting in the direction of the sun, I absolutely cannot see anything. Can't see the frame lines, can't see anything for that matter, so not the greatest. Not a big fan of that one. It's fine in like perfect lighting conditions, but the frame lines are also pretty weak. How convenient then that probably the Voigtlander Videomatic 1 is going to be the camera that I'm going to be using after I'm done making this video. But I mean, don't speak too soon. Maybe this is just going to be part of the collection and I'm not going to use it as much. I usually do try to use all of my cameras at least a little bit, even if that's just for some shots that I don't really care if they're going to be great. I do want these cameras to be used, I don't just want them to be sitting on my shelf. But let's see. Maybe this camera is actually great, maybe the pictures turn out great and I can just use it. Let's see. So the pictures are done developing and scanning and all of that, and I mean, I'm not sure what I was expecting. First time views of the channel, don't worry, this isn't what my pictures usually look like. Usually they look better than this. This isn't my best work for sure. So one thing I was worried about is that with all of the dirt on the shutter, it would have been possible that we have some sort of trouble where the shutter is too slow or something like that, and all of the pictures could have been overexposed. Luckily that didn't happen. The exposures look absolutely fine. What isn't fine is the sharpness of the lens. So if you look at these highlights especially, you can really see just how not sharp they are. It almost looks like we have bokeh specular highlights, although I was shooting at f8 basically the entire time. This almost reminds me of what a mist filter would do, if in case you guys know what that is. And I mean, if you look at the inside of the lens, it almost does look like a mist filter with all of these dots. So that's just kind of what it did. And I mean, some of the pictures, it looks kind of interesting, like kind of an interesting aesthetic, but I mean, sadly, the highlights aren't the only thing that are not sharp. Everything is not sharp. This lens in general is just not sharp, so that's not great. There is some good news though, and I guess that's a good time to update you guys on the state of this camera, because as I said, I was kind of scared to break anything, so that's why I wanted to film this video before making any further restoration attempts. Now I'm back to trying to restore this camera, and as you can see, I did manage to open up the lens. And what I did is, I took a pair of scissors, just put them in here, used it as a lever, just cracked the lens open. You guys may be able to tell why I didn't want to do that before filming this video, because trying to put all of this together will be pretty interesting. And I guess I can just show you with that I was able to remove and clean all of the glass elements, so the whole sharpness thing should be fine now with the glass being clean. I was also able to reached the front of the shutter to clean that as well, but that doesn't seem to have done much. The slower shutter speeds still get stuck open, and I've also unlocked a new problem. I mean, you can see the functionality of the shutter still not being all there. So there's gonna need to be some more experimentation with that, I guess, if I ever want to get this camera to work again, and I'm not sure if I'm gonna be able to do it. But that's for another day, because this video is here to answer two questions. One, is a camera like this enough to take good film pictures? And personally, I would say no. I mean, you can see the pictures, make your own judgments. I guess the aesthetic could be kind of interesting, this kind of blown out, not sharp, really soft aesthetic, but for me personally, those pictures don't look too great. And the second question is it even worth it trying to restore a camera like this? And really, I have to say, probably not. The answer is probably no. As I just accidentally removed this here, I guess. Okay, that's cool, that's fun. Why is this loose now? Okay. This is not, well, okay, as I just discovered another thing that's wrong with this lens. Oh man, the amount of hours I've invested into trying to restore this camera, like, it's bad. It's been weeks and hours upon hours. I haven't counted, but it's a lot. I looked on eBay. A camera like this, in at least according to the seller, functional condition, costs about 30 euros, or there's even lower offers for as low as 20 euros for what the seller says is a functional model of this camera. So absolutely not worth it. I've said it in a prior video, but if I spent the same amount of hours I spent working on this camera, just doing some overtime hours at work, I would have had enough money to buy, at this point, probably 2 or 3 of those cameras. So from a time and money standpoint, it absolutely isn't worth it. I could have just bought another one that works. The reason why I tried to restore this model is because it's a family heirloom of sorts. I got it from my grandaunt, so that's why I wanted to use this model and not another one that I order online. So I guess from an emotional connection standpoint, it might be worth it trying to fix one of those cameras, but from a money and time standpoint, I wouldn't say it's really worth it. I'm gonna try some more. I'm gonna see if I can get it to work. I'm in it so deep now that I kind of want it to work, but we will see how all of that turns out. I guess it's kind of cool from like an emotional connection standpoint to know that you tried fixing the camera and then took pictures with it, even if they aren't perfect. It's kind of a cool feeling, I guess, but it's also very nerve-wracking, especially not knowing if the pictures you took actually worked, not really trusting the cameras because you know you've been digging inside of all of these gears and stuff, and I mean, look at this clunky mess. But to end this trip off on a good note, I did want to mention that one thing I really appreciate about this camera is that my grandaunt also gave me this little well, I don't know, what would it be called? Carrier, box, packaging, whatever. This thing that you can, a protective case, I guess. It makes it easier to carry, protects it when you're not using it. It even includes a little scale, how to expose images. That's good, I need that. A fun touch. I know this isn't exclusive to this camera. This kind of stuff was made for many different cameras, but this is the only one I own, so I appreciate having it for that reason. Again, gonna look great in my collection, and well, let's hope this camera isn't just a piece for the collection, but also still an active functional camera. But yeah, with that, thank you guys so much for watching. Little spoiler about my next video. In that video, I'm gonna be shooting this film for the first time. I've never tried it before. Let's see what I can do with this. That's gonna be the next video, so stay tuned for that. And oh yeah, how am I gonna do my outro in here? So once that other video is out, I'm gonna have it linked up here, and then down here there will be my film photography playlist with tests of all the other cameras I've tested so far and all of my other film photography videos. So check that out if you want to see more. Thank you guys for watching. Goodbye.